So, here's the deal. 24th of June, I want to have a website launched. That website, I want to be the start of an interactive project I've had in mind for literal years. I've been trying super long to get it off the ground, and this is the point where I'm like, we're just going to go for it. I really wanted to do this live on stream. Not actually the coding part, but specifically the live writing that I want to do. Because what I want this to be is a big world building project. Except my router isn't stable enough for that. And I likely won't be moving out until at least a year from now. Well, probably more like half a year. And I won't get a better router, or at least I won't be able to get a better router until that point. So, here we are. Today is going to be not day one. This week is going to be week one. And I want to try and see if I can log the process of getting this website online. Because if I can't do it live on stream, I might as well share it this way. So, I want to take you along on this process as I try to awkwardly figure out how, well, camera angles work, how editing works, how coding works, because I've never done that before. Not entirely true. I've done a little bit of it. But mostly I haven't done coding. I try to figure out visual design, I want to try and figure out a lot of my writing style, all at the same time, with an arbitrary deadline of the 24th of June, for a reason that I'm not going to be sharing yet. But it is the little kick in the ass that I truly need to get this off the ground. Today I mainly spent, which today is the 29th of May, I mainly spent getting a lot more information into a baseline website setup that my partner very lovingly made for me. The way I am learning coding is by entirely reverse engineering every single problem until I hopefully maybe get a bit of a feel for it. I'm not good at following classes, I'm not good at getting taught things, so I mainly just try to brute force it until it kind of makes sense, and or until I fall flat on my face enough times that I learn. Which is to say, if you have tips, if you have ideas for how to improve the coding, the visual design, any setup of this website that I'm doing, you can kindly let me know in the comments. Emphasis on kindly. Because I am trying to figure this out as I go. That includes figuring out editing, figuring out audio. I'm currently underneath my bed because that's where my PC is set up. For the first time, opening software and trying to do a voiceover on my phone. However, let me spare you having to look at me absolutely struggling with the basis of HTML and actually maybe move on to a quick overview of everything we have so far to maybe give you a little bit of an idea of what kind of storytelling we're going to be going for and where we are at the moment. So let me pull up the file. This is the map I have so far. Is it a functional map yet? No. If you put this into a helpful website that allows you to turn a flat map into a sphere, it'll very quickly show you that this is not an accurate map. Nothing lines up. That is fine. For now, it's just for visual purpose. You'll find the concept of this is fine for now. That will come back a lot. Because I am trying to just get this up and published by the 24th of June, and I really need to just curb stomp my perfectionism for this to work. Also, the names I have here marked with the continents, they are vague overviews of what each biome is going to be like. Of course, we don't have areas this big that are just rainforest. It just has to do with how I lined up tectonic plates once, so I can kind of keep track of what vibe each place is going for. We're trying to avoid a Planet of the Hat situation here. Anyway, I at the moment only really have 4 locations marked in, and my hope is that by the end of the week I have all the locations marked in that I have that should go on this map. So let's just quickly run through all of them. Up in the wonderful continent of Iceland, we have our split village. Now, this is, I think, one of the first locations I wrote when I realized I wanted to start. Why are there 2 commas here? Okay. This is, I think, there's also Toon Square. What the fuck? I cannot write, apparently. God damn. Well then. Anyway. I think the Split Village is one of the... I also can't capitalize. I'm gonna stop complaining now. Okay. The Split Village is, I think, one of the first pieces I wrote and finished into something semi-functional. When I decided to step away from writing within TTRPG systems like D&D and just write more freehand without using things like DC and stats and other terminology as a crutch. Split Village is a village high up in a mountain pass separated by a river for half the year. When the tops of the mountains, a lot of the snow and glaciers and stuff melts. It splits this village with a raging river. The village is run by 2 mayors who run it as one place when there's not a raging river around, and who run it as 2 separate towns when there is this river in between. They have ways of getting across the river if need be. However, almost out of religious spite and vibes, they decide not to, and to run it as 2 separate places. These 2 mayors are considered kind of chosen by Ethereal, goddess of love and connection. Split Village is one of the locations that I have the most worked out. This doesn't really reflect it well, as again, as you saw, I am fighting with HTML and font size. We'll get that figured out soon. Second location we've got is our desert. I have a tent of trinkets. This is going to be a little bit of a trigger warning, just for not very ethical trading. But as an example, a mermaid race that only grows as big as their habitat allows. Therefore, if you trap it in an aquarium very young, they stay small and decorative. There are some polymorph jars. I need to find a way to rephrase that, but basically ways of smuggling animals that are dangerous to take with you by magically turning them into something smaller. Some terminology does still linger from having played so much D&D, so also Pokemon. So I still need to rewrite some of that. I have our Mountain Rage of the Nomads. This is, I think, the first kind of group of people I wrote after the Split Village, which is a group of nomads who travel along this entire mountain ridge in the center of the world. Which, yes, is intended to be way larger than you would likely see, realistically speaking, but we'll get into that another time. As well as the Rocky Desert, because that's a great part of it. They travel kind of across these mountains, some of them making their way from one point to the other, whereas others kind of walk these little small circles. And dotted around these mountains are these waypoints to help aid the nomads whenever they have sick or pregnant people, whenever they have children that can't walk as far, whenever they have elderly that just can't keep up with the nomadic lifestyle anymore. They get set up at these waypoints which can take care of them. But also these points are places where we can actually, grow herbs, plants, food, house animals if we need to train them. Basically anything that needs to be done in a stationary point, these waypoints help with. And they're often run by these wise elders, right? A thing we'll get into later is that these wonderful mountain nomads at some point got stolen towards the desert because this mountain ridge has access to water, and if we know anything about, humans and therefore humanoids, where there's water, there is excessive travel. They get stolen away to the desert and at some point escaped as an event, again we will get into later. I don't have time for everything today. Where slavery was involved, and when they broke free, they weren't able to go back to their own mountain range, but they did find a different one. And said different mountain range became their new home, which I really like delving into, because it means that a population of people is rebuilding their culture basically from memory without having the hundreds and thousands of years, maybe not thousands, but hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years to develop this lifestyle and have it naturally grow and have these kind of elderly that run the waypoints naturally appointed, and they don't have any of that. They have to rebuild a lot of cultural depth via memory and brute forcing it, because there's just this big group of people turning up at a mountain ridge that really wasn't expecting them. That's something I really want to delve into a bit later. I have a friend of mine, Jazz, who's a wonderful historian, who's been helping me out making sense of how long it takes people to do that kind of thing, and the survival rate of breaking out of slavery and that kind of stuff. They've been a wonderful research. My last point that I currently have in this map is the thing I always call my lesbian volcano. I think I will have to do an entirely separate video on the lore of this, because it's a long story, but the short of it is that way before humanoids existed on this planet, the world was made up of primordial beings, things that we nowadays can't really comprehend but only really try to find language for. One of these primordial creatures, primordial elders, was Artis. Artis was the Songs on the Wind. And Artis fell in love with Dakota, a forest dweller, and Dakota started getting incredibly afraid of the idea that the world might one day have to live without Artis. So they set upon trying to find something that could create immortality. Now, that is the one thing that all the kind of not gods at the moment, but the primordial beings in charge of way larger things had forbid. Everything was made up of cycles, and cycles needed to continue on, but they also needed to at some point end and then be reborn for it to work the way it did. So when Dakota succeeded and made a honey of immortality, they got killed. Artis, out of retaliation for that killing, drank the honey, and then with that, out of retaliation to her retaliation, got trapped underneath a mountain. That mountain 1,000 years later split open from her rage and love for Dakota, yada yada yada. Thus the first volcano. I always call it the lesbian volcano because that name just kind of sticks with people and it's always funny every single time. So, big birthing place of all humanoids. Those are the 4 points I currently have in. I think in my non-categorized information I have a few more points I want to get in. Artificer elves, which live inside of a massive tree stump, who are a peaceful, pacifistic group of people, except they have a arcane council who has gotten scared of being found out, their populace inside this tree being found out, and they've been secretly making war aids, we'll call them, but hiding them as everyday decorations and jewelry and household items for people, so they don't know that they're being protected by them. Leaf dragons will probably be a pre-calamity thing. Wandering frog people, definitely. They are more kind of swamp-esque creatures. And this is purely based off of a song that I really like. Overgrowing ivy is a lovely plant type that is able to eat through and get rid of any kind of dying matter, like, for example, corpses, that cities may have used to, like, clear out gravesites or get rid of dangerous plants. It basically just eats through all matter in its way. And I really want a kind of overgrowing ivy forest, I guess, that they weren't able to contain in time. It's an idea I still really love. Leech tattoos will also be a swamp people pre-calamity thing. It is basically purposefully getting these circular wounds from leeches and then putting dye or ash in it to make a kind of tattoo. And then this would kind of be granted to warriors when they came back from battle to signify, I'm not sure yet, but like how many people they killed, or like what kind of catch they got, or like, I don't know, how many men they led. I don't know. I have a list of traveling merchants that I think are neat. They are back from when I wanted to make a writing portfolio that was just like, you know, a single file I could send to people. And one of them that I know is going to be pre-calamity is a brewer that just walks around with this massive keg of beer on his back, sending it off to adventurers that he comes across, kind of Obelix style. And the further he's able to walk, the more like exotic ingredients he's able to find, and with that, the more unique his beer becomes, and the more, you know, it might not be for everyone, and the further he walks again. Really like this friend, he's awesome. Shepherd spear hunting is pre-calamity because it's specifically tied to the Split Village. I don't know if you've ever seen a Shepherd's Leap. I highly recommend looking it up. It's super fun to look at and to watch. I thought that would be a really cool way to do hunting, where instead of just, like, a Shepherd's Leap is originally used to just get down steep cliffs and stuff without hurting yourself. I would love doing that with just like a sharp spear and using it as a hunting method. So I've been editing this video as I've been recording it. And yesterday evening, while sitting down with Jazz and having a look at my world map and the 5,000 year timeline of it, I had a realization how rudimentary the map is, and also realized that to make this project feasible with an actual map visible and the stuff I want to write, that I both need to just redo it and also isolate a smaller part. Which is not to say that we won't be writing everything I just mentioned. It's just to say that we're going to be distilling it a little bit more. As it is now Thursday and I want to get this video out, I'm going to be ending it here, and this video will just kind of serve as a little quick start guide of what we'll be doing. But next week, which for me will be starting today, I am going to focus on redefining what part of the world I currently want to write about, and hopefully creating a map that is coherent with that. So thank you very much for sticking through this long rambling of world building hyperfixation, and I will hopefully see you again in roughly 7 days. Thank you!